There are hundreds of NFL prospects here at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, and there is scouts galore evaluating those prospects. 32 teams looking to find that diamond in the rough, the perfect fit for them. So what is the latest with the Washington Commanders?
Well, we know that they're going to be interested in adding some type of quarterback, at least at one point in the draft or in free agency. Ron Rivera said yesterday that he is not afraid to make the big aggressive move, going for a Matthew Stafford type trade. And when you look at a Matthew Stafford type trade, former quarterback, couple first round picks,
you could say it worked out well, I guess.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you walk away as the one team on the top of the world, you're going to be very excited. And this is a roster that they do feel like can contend right now. They have a 1,000-yard receiver in Terry McLaurin. They're getting a healthy Curtis Samuel back in the slot. They have a decent enough offensive line. And the defense was at times last year, when fully healthy, showing why they could be the #1 defense going into 2022. So you look at this overall draft class, they're not saying no to the rookie quarterbacks such as a Malik Willis out of Liberty or a Pitt quarterback, Kenny Pickett. They're looking for the best option on the table. And in the NFC East, where they've already won it with a sub-500 record and wanting to take that next step under Rivera at his age, they're going to do everything in their power. The more aggression, the better for Rivera going into the season. It's going to be very interesting to see how the free agent market plays into this.
Yes.
Guys like Mitchell Trubisky, Andy Dalton, potentially Teddy Bridgewater, or who is actually going to be available and what is going to be the final cost for a trade on the market.
I wonder if Kenny Pickett is going to talk today, as last I checked he was about a half an hour, 45 minutes late to speak.
So he's about ready to talk right now. We're actually going to be able to go get some info on him, but I was able to talk to him about the Senior Bowl. One of the biggest things that he took away was his accuracy issues. One of the big steps that he worked with Pitt this past year was working on the short to intermediate throws, not the deep ball. And those are some things that will definitely translate to the NFL. Look at a guy like Joe Burrow and Mac Jones coming out. One of the biggest reasons they were so successful during their rookie seasons was not because of the deep ball velocity, but rather the consistency. Teams are always looking for those type of quarterbacks that can continuously move the ball, control the time of possession, and limit those turnovers. Kenny Pickett did all of that at Pitt last season, and there was a reason why he was a Heisman finalist. Those little things will help him translate very early on to maybe even being the first quarterback selected when it comes to April 28th.
And we will see how he may fit with the Washington Commanders. Another top quarterback prospect here in Indianapolis is quarterback Matt Corral. So he was asked if he had spoke with the Atlanta Falcons yet. He said yes, and that, quote, he would be dumb to not learn from quarterback Matt Ryan. How do you think he might fit with the Falcons?
It'd be a really interesting one. And the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that Arthur Smith was the big primary factor in getting Ryan Tannehill back in action and finding his success over the last 2 years when he was the Tennessee Titans offensive coordinator.
Right.
Now, Corral is going to be one of the more polarizing prospects to watch this week because we're not going to be watching him. He's not going to be throwing. He's not going to be doing anything. So it's really important for him to master the art of the interview process. And a lot of the scouts and a lot of the coaches that I've spoken to this past week have said it's not about just the on-field production. It's about the in-person meetings. They want to be able to get the most well-rounded prospect for their organization. Now, Corral, in my opinion, has all the intangibles to be probably a mid-season starter working his way into the first-team offense, where other guys maybe are going to take a year or two. So when you look at the Atlanta Falcons, if they're not moving off Matt Ryan and they're not willing to admit that they're entering a rebuild with a brand new quarterback, that may not be the best fit, but you do know they are interested. And when you look at what Arthur Smith's offense is, how they run the RPO down at Oxford, and what they're trying to do with a more 12 personnel for the likes of Atlanta, maybe it actually could work out. And you never know. Sometimes bad fits are always just slowly moving into the right formation over time. Opposites attract, and maybe those two styles of offenses actually will end up being a big plethora and a big plus size for Corral's future in the NFL.
Important to note that Corral is at 100%. He started throwing 2 weeks ago, but just decided that he was going to hold off on the combine. He's going to throw it at his pro day.
Oxford is going to be a must-see spectacle event, and I'm going to tell you guys right now, if he impresses, he very well could be the first quarterback selected. All the intangibles, all the tools are there for him to be one of the prime starters by midseason next year.
Well, we will find out soon. One of the best things about the NFL Combine, the NFL Draft, is about all of the hope that it brings for each team. And we all know the Houston Texans could use a lot of hope. So what is the latest with the Texans?
So the Texans are open for business. Let's get that word out of the way. Open for business. And that does not just mean getting rid of a guy like Deshaun Watson on the market for a plethora of picks is what Nick Cassero is, of course, going to want, but also that pick at number 3. The number 3 selection is usually going to be someone who trades up for a quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, potentially how Matt Corral does his pro day, to be able to see is one team willing to make that jump up to number 3. But the Texans right now have 9 picks on their big board. They are looking to expand that number. So that could mean potentially it's not just number 3. Laremy Tunsil for the right price could be moved. Other players potentially could be moved. It's Brandon Cooks. It'll be very interesting to see what offers kind of come in on the table for Cassero to help this rebuild after last season going 4-13 with new head coach Lovie Smith.
Yes, absolutely. Let's jump to the Dallas Cowboys. Head coach Mike McCarthy spoke yesterday talking about Dak Prescott undergoing the shoulder surgery in the offseason. But what I want to talk to you about is the people protecting him, their offensive line, and maybe a little bit of rework needed there for the Cowboys. What's the latest on what you're hearing with the Cowboys draft plan?
Well, you got to be willing to block your quarterback. That's number one, especially when you're going into off-season surgery, plus when you've already had multiple surgeries on your lower body. So
important to note that it is his non-throwing shoulder.
Thank goodness on that. But we have to be able to discuss the fact that there are a little bit of aging ailments on that offensive line. Tyron Smith is getting up there. We don't really know what the stats is going to be with Connor Williams hitting free agency. So getting interior offensive line help is going to be big. 2 names that I would definitely be keeping a close eye on. Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M, former All-American when playing the guard position in 2020, helping produce one of the best SEC rushing attacks with Devon Achane and Isaiah Spiller. And then Tyler Linderbaum, potentially the best center that no one is talking about as a top 10 player. But naturally, because of the position as lesser value, you see that kind of tumble down the board. Maybe 24 is where it stops. And keep in mind that Travis Frederick was dubbed the worst pick of the first round. And I think a lot of Cowboys fans are very excited about him. Maybe Linderbaum, a top 5 player in my personal opinion in this draft class, falls to Dallas, solidifies that interior offensive line, not just for the protection of Dak Prescott, but also to solidify that run game.
Yes, absolutely. Now, we have said that all 32 NFL teams are here at the Scouting Combine, but it's kind of a lie in a way because the Los Angeles Rams really aren't here. They're conducting most of their interviews via Zoom. They don't have a pick in the first 100 picks. What's the latest on the Rams?
Well, it's going to be interesting, but I will say this. If Les Snead is as good as he looks to be, I can promise you they're going to find picks. They've always been able to get that day 3 selections, and one of the biggest influences is getting day 3 secondary players. They landed Jordan Fuller, the safety out of UCLA, a few years ago at pick 199, and he became such a staple, they felt comfortable letting John Johnson walk in free agency. Plus, with all the compensation picks they'll get from losing Troy Hill and John Johnson and Gerald Everett and several other players, those selections in rounds 4, 5, 6, they can maybe even package a couple of those deals to move up into the top 100 to find a potential franchise left tackle. Now, the biggest storyline to watch for the scouts this week here in Los Angeles is how to fix that offensive line. Great protection for Matthew Stafford last season, but 3 of the 5 starters are potentially either hitting free agency or Andrew Wood, they're calling it a career retirement. Those are some things that you're definitely going to want to upgrade. And Sean McVay, we all know what that offensive personnel can be with the likes of a healthy Robert Woods, a Cooper Kupp, a Tyler Higbee. They got to be able to protect your quarterback. So I'll be very interested to see how the scouts view some of these day 2 offensive tackles. And Abe Lucas out of Washington, a Bahard Reinman out of Central Michigan, Daniel Falale out of Minnesota. These are names that you could potentially see maybe Les Snead packaging a couple of those compensation picks to move up and solidify that left tackle position long term opposite of Rob Davis.
Can't wait to see what the Rams do as they begin their defense of their Super Bowl title.